Ulana ke jemokrin na li shumokoli na tru ni la mokuchi mudalani ke la sumuki. Ishmokrama domni anchim doni hashemne. Welcome back for the 14th episode in the Bringing Light to the Darkness series. I'm so happy to be back with you, and I did actually record this last weekend. The video was scrapped. It was all full of weird color fields and lines and dashes, and we're still in Mercury retrograde, but I'm crossing my fingers. I've done a little bit of troubleshooting around that, and hopefully we're good to go. And here in Alaska, the winter has been awesome. I really love cold. I know that sounds weird. Alaska's in the winter in January is not for everybody. We don't have very much light, but it's been magical. It's been really magical. I have a snow bike, a fat tire snow bike with studs. You know, the tires are immense. It's a beast of a bike. And when I'm riding and it's really cold out, I'm still really warm. We've had some nights that were down in the negative 40s. And after that, everything above that, if we get closer to minus 10 or 0, it's like a heat wave. So I'm just enjoying it. Thanks for sympathetically enjoying along with me. So what else do I want to offer here before we jump in? I have a new Telegram channel. I'm trying to divest myself completely of Facebook because I think it's just such a compromised platform, and you can find me the Telegram link below. I've been on some amazing interviews in the last few weeks here, Elena Denon and Tony Rodriguez, and Tyler returning to truth, Tyler and Aaron. I had a great conversation with them. Thank you so much. So those links to new video content is also below. And what are we diving into today? Well, I'm going to go into some documentation around my father's life and some other things, but around that, a couple of years ago, after he died in March of 2020, I would not have been able to kind of resource his leavings and his papers and things the way I have now. I needed time to kind of work through and make my own journey with all the memories that had come back, first and foremost, and just the emotional content of the relationship with him. So it's been an immense and impactful time with all that. And it's almost like I'm reconstructing parts of my own life through reconstructing what I understand now about who he was. So a lot of discovery here. And he was indeed the consummate mystery man. So I'm going to dive deeper into that pretty quick here. I'm also going to reveal some new information, like shocking new revelations about my brother. I have some documentation on that as well, and some new information about the mantids on Mars, and finally beginning to recall some like battle memories, which if you've listened to this series, you know that has not been easy for me. The ways in which I was a perpetrator and causing harm to other beings, other groups, other races. So that's been opening up in a really astonishing way. And then a little bit of it's not a little bit, a fucking shocking conclusion at the very end connected to Dad. So here we go. I want to say to my dad, yeah, I have so much, before we dive in and I share what I want to share on all that, I want to say that there's been an immense amount of forgiveness, or I could even say equanimity. Maybe that's a better word. Equanimity, like holding everything that happened here in the programs and everything that he contributed to that. He was a gateway. He was the keystone for me ending up in the programs. Without him working in the military industrial complex, there would have been no Rebecca in the SSP, etc. So I'm quite confident of that. And what's interesting too is I've come into such a deeper place of compassion for him and for my own self, my own journey. Like we were so wed, and I understand more of that now. So let's dive in. I won't belabor the point of too much of what we're going to kind of unpack a little bit more of his work from what I have in documentation. If you don't know, I mean, if anybody's watched more than one of my videos, you probably have heard me mention him before. I mean, he's mentioned pretty frequently on interviews, as he's just always been the seminal feature in my abduction, my military abduction experiences. So he was we could call him an aeronautical engineer. I never would have said that when I was a kid. Like, what does that even mean? Certainly an engineer, a research and development specialist, a computer geek, and an inventor. He was a creative mind. He was a really unschooled, uneducated, creative mind. And he had a certain amount of brilliance, I would say. Yeah. So oh gosh, he worked with cryptology, with the Navy, steganography, all kinds of intel, communications being a broad field. What does that even mean? Or worked with early microwave and radar technologies and satellite, everything to do with satellite communication. So let's go into a little bit. Let's do a screen share. And he did, I mean, I know he mentioned working with all branches of the military, the Marines. The one that always kind of throws me for a loop is the CIA, and having to report to CIA headquarters. Then we get into some fishy territory, wouldn't you agree? He didn't, you know, in the time that I spoke to him while he was in hospice, this is where I got the most information. And unfortunately, I was not able to record those conversations. He would have known. He was sharp, even at the end of his life. As much as he'd been through, he would have noticed. And he would not have spoken. So unfortunately, I don't have those conversations on record, and I wish I did. So the screen share, which I'm hoping not to blow, I did last time, and I had to do a lot of editing. All right, bear with me. We are actually going to start with my mother. A brief share, a photograph you'll see here in a moment. Making sure this is sharing. Yes, okay, I think we have success in the screen share department. Okay, so this is crazy. Before we go into my father, we are looking at a 1962 photograph of my mother. She was re-enlisting in the Army. And this was a staged photograph for Army promotional purposes that she ended up in. My mother's the lady in the glasses. And you can see where I got my nose. Actually, relook, you can see that we have a resemblance there. I found this photograph on eBay. I was doing a web search on my grandfather, who is featured to her left, the Reverend, and my mother's mother there on the left of the photo, she looks so old. She looks so aged. I know she was older when she had my mom, but wow. Yeah, so this kind of blew my hair back when I just randomly found this photograph online. So again, my mom in 1962, my mom was in the Army, she's re-enlisting. Oh, whoa. Okay. Far out. So this is, again, taken in 1962. This is my father in the Army, Fort Monmouth, I believe. So 62, Dad's the tall guy on the right. Dad was 6'5". He was a formidable build, let's say. And he's like 19 years old. Look at these guys, they are so young. But I think it's interesting looks like he's kind of getting his party on with his buddies in the Army here. Interesting to look at both of them before they didn't meet till 65. Anyway, just a little backstory there. And then we're going back into the early of my father's work in the Army. I mean, he's still a private first class here, U.S. Army Signal School. And so what is a Signal Corps? Signal Corps was responsible for working out all the communications, all the signals intelligence, right? Going back into, I mean, this era is, we're talking 60 years ago. So there in the fine print, and this is 1963, microwave radio equipment repair course, excuse me, whoa, right there. So it's just showing how at the very beginning he was what he was moving into, what was he studying, what was his background. Kind of really old. It's kind of fun going through old documents, in a way that everything is digitalized now. So it's kind of cool to move through things that feel there's something more real and authentic to these older relics. Let's see what else we have here. Again, this was a little later on, 65, satellite communication training. So we have microwave, satellite. This is all training him for the Signal Corps, and he was in the Signal Corps in Vietnam. And I read something interesting. What was this? The first satellite terminal ever installed in a combat zone was in 1964 in Saigon, Vietnam. So interesting, like some of the early communications developments and technology. I think he really liked what he was doing. Dad originally got a scholarship, a wrestling scholarship, to the Colorado School of Mines in Golden, Colorado. He went for a semester, dropped out, and didn't like it. So he didn't know what to do, so he joined the Army. He was not a military guy at all. He was a free spirit. He was a creative person and definitely a free thinker. This is a clearance document, actually a clearance application, top secret clearance application from June 6, 77. You can see that in the upper right. And this is just delineating his time in the Signal Corps. You can see that in the orange mark there. 62 to 68, he worked in the Signal Corps. So he was a kind of signal soldier. And they were doing important work. Without their developments in communications, how would they be ferrying information back to DC and so on from the South Pacific? Yeah. And my father never talked about his time in the Army. At some point, he had a secret clearance with the Army, but he was never in top secret at that point in his career. This is just, again, you can see U.S. Army Strategic Communications Command facility. This is Okinawa. He's been being sent to SATCOM, Satellite Command, Philippines station. So he was stationed in the Philippines for quite a while doing the same gig. So anyway, we see his early kind of career development track here. Yeah, absolutely. And then we're kind of going to fast forward into some other stuff. So he's out of the Army, and look at the date on this, April 13th, 72. I am currently in gestation. I am not yet born. I was born in October 72. If you haven't caught it, my father's name is David Barfoot. And my last name, if you visited my website, is Barfoot as well. Rebecca Rose Barfoot is my given name. So after he left the Army, he was discharged from the Army, and he was picked up by Sanders. And Sanders Associates was a company that later merged with Lockheed. My father's entire career was with Sanders Lockheed in civilian terms. So we can see already before I'm born that he is doing, his work is getting noticed. His creation, his ability to problem solve is noticed. So amazing. So this is interesting, the wording. David submits on February 7, 72, the award-winning suggestion number 47659, which is deemed commendable and indicative of individual initiative contributing to the future growth of Sanders Associates. All right, so we have I found a bunch of these things. There's another one here. David Barfoot, blah, blah, blah. The undersigned is in recognition of your cooperation, effort, and significant contribution to the success of BRD-7 program, Special Programs Division. So you notice it's all cryptic language. We don't really know what he contributed and to what. I was less than a year old at that time. So early on, I mean, this is going way back, but in the very beginning of his career with the military industrial complex, Sanders being responsible for 100%, I think, of defense contracts. That's what they did. And Sanders became, like I said, Sanders Lockheed, later became Lockheed Martin. And now in Nashua, New Hampshire, it's owned, it was bought out by BAE Systems, which is still, after all these years, the biggest gig in town. They're still the biggest employer in the city. I said my father was largely a self-made man, or really unschooled. I mean, other than the army, he, you know, he could figure things out. He really didn't need degrees, and I have followed in his footsteps. I have no degrees. But they schooled him. They sent, here's his New England Aeronautical Institute. They sent him, he got his associates, and eventually they sent him to night school and he could get his bachelor's. But he arrived a blank slate, and they could train him, mold him in their image, let's say, just the way they wanted. And I like to think at this point in the game, there was still some innocence in the relationship he had with his employers. I think that changed over time when he went into the world of top secret. I mean, my father, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I kind of was like, when I was sitting with him in hospice back before he died in late 2019, early 2020, he said things like, I taught myself orbital trigonometry. I'm like, of course you did, because they could give the guy a budget, say what they needed, and he would go fucking figure it out. That's how he loved to figure out how things worked. He would take things apart just to see what was inside of them, put them back together. So when he said something about reverse engineering Russian technology, I do not know exactly what he was talking about, or what the thing he was back engineering was. He would love that. He would delight in that. Very much a curious mind. How they do that, I want to know. And I have long suspected that he was getting, I probably mentioned this before, help from the Greys. And when he was in hospice, and I said this to him, were you getting higher help? He never denied that. He would chuckle and look away, and he knew what I meant. He knew what I meant, to solve his higher level problems at work and otherwise. He was getting tech information from the Greys. Of course, I don't have proof of that. I wish I did. All right, so let's move on from this thing here. So here we know he's moving into top secret. So upper right, June 6, 77. This is the application for the top secret clearance. As far as I can tell, that's his first inroad. So I am still 4 years old at that point in time. And this is given by the Defense Industrial Security Clearance Office in Columbus, Ohio. Oh, and then we get him, what's happening here? So why is he getting that particular clearance? Well, one reason is that he's going to be sent off to work with the Navy. They sent him into the Naval Reserve in 79. You can see that he's beginning 13 November 78. He's being recruited via Sanders Lockheed so he can work with naval intelligence. And he will be there until November 12th, 1980. So 2 years, which isn't very long. I remember him going on the weekends, and I'd be like, because he'd have his Navy uniform on, and like, I'm really so confused as my father in the Navy. What is he doing? Yeah. I remember one time he came back and he was rattled, and he was kind of exhilarated, and he had gone on, he said, what I could gather, what I think now is they sent him up on he had to go climb by hand physically up to the top of some tower outside in some big, parabolic disc to adjust it, I think. Anyway, let's dig a little more into the Navy thing. This is the sort of details that assignment from the regional active duty cryptologic officer. And so it's related to the clearance. A clearance determination request has been sent to Naval Security Group Command regarding David's eligibility for a Naval Security Group top secret clearance. And then down below, affiliation with the Naval Security Group is dependent on the results of the special background investigation, blah, blah, blah. And I did, along with this, I found papers that they had investigated my mother heavily. I didn't include that documentation here because it had all kinds of personal information in it, and that doesn't need to be online. But this sort of, we know he's being sent in as a cryptologic tech. That's what CT is in that subject application for enlistment in the CT rating of David Howard Barfoot, cryptologic technician. Oh, this is from the Navy Project Bulldog Wars. You can see the top, United States Naval Security Group Command at the very top there, and kind of an interesting relic. This thing was a glossy, like 8x10 piece of paper. Interesting, he chose to keep that. And the discharge from the Navy. So I wish I had more, you know, he wasn't a saver of stuff. He was not attached to material possessions really at all. Yeah, at all. Not too much. So this is, again, November 80. He's kind of, as far as I know, he's done with the Navy gig, but he's getting deeper and deeper into the top secret world at this point. And I think that coincides a lot with kind of loss of soul. Every 5 years, they have to renew the top secret clearance. And so upper right, you can see June 13th, 83, pretty much on the nose 5 years after 77. Yeah, is that right? I was doing the math with my fingers. It's 5 years. He's got to reapply for the top secret clearance. So you can see that there. That's what he's getting into, another, you know, just extending that clearance allocation. And again, we know there's levels of top secret. Where does it end, right? How many degrees of top secret are there? And he had always mentioned working with a lot of sensitive compartmented information sets. And in some circles, that's deemed as above top secret. When he was in hospice, he was like, I don't know why they gave me access to so much stuff. And I'm like, well, you want to tell me about it? He was very secretive, even though he knew he was dying. And those guys, at least I can speak to my father, he never lied, I don't think, but he would omit information. And to them, that was like telling the truth. What I find interesting here too is that it's not even so much the information that I have that I can show here. It just doesn't amount to that much. I think it's still interesting because we see his path, we see the trajectory. It's what's left out, because this 83 document is where it ends. And he worked for them for another almost 10 years. And it was around 83 that he started drinking heavily. I was taken to Mars in 82, Mars and points beyond, for a very long stint in space. He died of alcoholism, and I'd watched him drink himself to death, which was probably one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. It's pretty emotional. And I do wonder how much that had to do with his work in the classified world and the manipulations that happen in that world. I don't think in the end of all that, in the early 90s, that he was in complete ownership of his mind. Let's move on to what is next here. Oh, I know what I'm going to share. So this next document, we're moving away from the formal docs, and we're moving into, we are moving into some stuff that these are his personal notes. I can tell from the handwriting, which changed over time, that this is from 70s, possibly the early 80s. His writing lost the loopiness and became more linear over time as he aged. Let me read this to you. It is shocking. Concept of sensor union based on angstrom spacing of neurons of the brain being tuned to molecular or atomic wavelength of certain substance and or masses for detection artificial implantation of such receptors, rare earth, broken ring, chemical and or biological increase or creation of such receptors. There's a little formula. Clairvoyance, and then it looks like versus clairvoyance versus telepathic, telekinetic. Relate to mass psychology. And then there's another telepsychonetis, which is not a word I don't know what he was trying to delineate there. And I don't know what that R&T formula is. Anyway, this to me seems like I could relate this somewhat to controlling someone's mind. Is it concept of sensory union based on angstrom spacings of neurons in the brain being tuned to molecular atomic wavelength of certain substances or masses for detection? It's a little cryptic. It's not written exactly in the form of a comprehensive English sentence per se. Artificial implantation of receptors in the brain. We know what that is. So sensors for detection. So what are we detecting? Is it remotely engaging with someone who might be having a clairvoyant experience, a telepathic, a telekinetic experience, or inducing such experience in an individual? Anyway, this is his mind. And was this for work? Was this getting at something he observed in the world of deep black projects? We don't exactly know. In true form, it's written on the back of a brown paper bag. I do the very same thing. It's interesting too that he saved this over many years. Was this something that he was interfacing with the Greys around? We don't know, but yeah, it's this one really threw me for a loop. It's working, it's attuning the brain in some way to wavelengths. No. This is something I feel like I could look at forever and never quite parse out. Even looking at it intuitively. There's something else going on here. So with that, like I said, we're moving away from the official sort of Army, Navy, Lockheed documentation. Oh, this is the story. I read this a different time. I'm not going to read this, but this was the story that I've called The Exile, about a extraterrestrial who is disseminated across the cosmos in a ship of his own, and eventually finds the third rock from the sun and makes man in his own image. I drew that spaceship when I was, this is this late 70s, maybe 1980-ish. I knew because there was a diagram for a bathroom cabinet that he built out of wood on the back. And I remember when that cabinet was put in, it was the late 70s or maybe 1980. And it's interesting, I have this combustion exhaust pipes on the spaceship. I mean, 4 of them. I might have got that referencing Dad's motorcycle, you know, like the exhaust thing on there. I don't know, but it's it's kind of curious. So we know he has an interest in space and extraterrestrials. 100%. The interest in space here we're going to document and quite thoroughly. This is when Dad came to visit me, and I was living in Durango for close to 20 years. That's where I spent most of my life, adult life. Durango, Colorado, not far from Dulce, New Mexico. Yeah, Dad gave me a journal. This was back in 2006. I didn't read any of this until 2022. Astonishing, really. I kept it in my storage unit, which I cleaned out before I moved to Alaska and found this. So June 6, 92. Bear with me here. I'm going to read this. And it's going to outline his own clear sentient experience to some extent. But it's my father was he was a mystery man. At the very top, let me see if I can, excuse me. Sorry, guys. The astute observer will detect a physical lapse of these pages. What follows is a recreation of the valid portions of these 3 pages. He had taken an X-Acto knife and cut out 3 pages of the journal. What did he not want someone else to see? What did he want to delete from the record? In the top secret mindset. He's saying that what follows is a recreation. And I don't know if it had more to do with psychic experiences, out of body experiences. June 6, 92. Several occurrences have prompted extended musings on why I drink. Plain and simple, if I don't drown it, then my apparent path comes back much too forcefully, too vividly, and it still scares the hell out of me. He's being called into a spiritual path. I think at this point, he had finished up with Lockheed. I think he'd had it with that world, but in a way, it was too late for him. It was too late by far. The dreams I used to have of flying or leisurely floating now seem more like unrecognized out-of-body experiences, feelings of someone else I used to get when I touched them may in fact have been some sort of clairvoyance, of seeing what someone else had experienced and simply not recognizing it as such. That's pretty interesting to me, because that's not something he ever spoke of. He never talked about that. The concept of a one-way path, even before I have acknowledged the direction, still is forcefully unsettling. Consider the books which just happened to fall into my life, the Rampa books on the life of the Tibetan Lama, unknown man, detailing what we might be. He means existentially, what is mankind? Castanada's whole series on shamanic life, Tai Chi, Jin Shin Do, Do In, a whole series of herbal books. The list goes on. All seem to me to point toward my development as a helper and or healer, but progressing to what? And through it all, there's a firm conviction that it will be totally solitary and ultimately fatal. Really? I wish he could have seized the moment here. If I don't follow the path, I will not find peace. If I do, I will no longer be me. This is the major catch-22 in my life. Too powerful, but the power beckons. So, this was delineated over and over in the journals about this path that he felt like he could not answer, and it did dog him. Like, he was definitely called. I mean, did I say he was not military material? Absolutely. He actually, after he left that whole classified world, he went to Oregon, went to the East-West School of Massage, and became a massage therapist for a while. Alcohol consumed him. He lost his life. He lost his relationship. He lost his jobs. He was out of my life for many years because I was too fucked up over the alcohol thing. He was not any longer a functional alcoholic. He turned into somebody who was 24/7 on hard liquor. Really hard to watch. So we have some evidence of clairvoyant, clairsentient experience that he's kind of coming into consciousness about. He's claiming it for what it is. So we start to see it running through the family, I would say. His huge collection of sci-fi books points to an incredible interest in space and unconventional phenomena going on in other dimensions, across time, and so on. Strangers in the Universe, Startling Stories of Space and Time. City, this is, we got a cyborg here. I love looking at these old we would call them vintage now, 1960s, 70s sci-fi books. Galaxy Sci-Fi, April 1968. Three Times Infinity. 50 cents, man. I love the cover on this. There's something, well, it takes me somewhere, that's for sure. But definitely, we got proof of interest in space and extraterrestrial life. Let's go kind of moving way forward in time. This is from around the late 2016, 17, 18, something like that. We have this was on his desk. He had bunches of stuff. He was a pile maker and a kind of the man cave thing, right? It was messy. Creative minds messy. I'm not really different than that. I'm pretty similar, to be quite honest. Shrunken fractal helix. What is a shrunken fractal helix? Check out the math on that. That's pretty interesting. I think the shrunken fractal helix may be a reference to a fractal antenna, which would be, can operate, it's small, compact, receiving microwave frequencies, and can operate on many different frequencies simultaneously. I think he was going to couple this with radio software that he had on his computer. Let me tie this together a little later on when I get into the SDR software information. But interesting, check that out. Again, his mind was like in this place. This is where he was at home with math and numbers and formulas and that. Let's go down to the bottom. What does that say? This kind of cryptic reference to No Man's Sky. What is No Man's Sky? I had no idea, but I did a little web search. It's from the gaming world. It's actually to say a video game is too small. It's way too small. It's a universe that you can explore as a virtual reality. And I'm gonna stop the share and say hi in my larger version self here for a moment. Let me read about, some of you guys might know No Man's Sky. I have no idea about that world. And so I kind of had to do a little digging around. When I went to the No Man's Sky website, what do they say about this virtual experience? Entire galaxies waiting to be discovered. Uncover the secrets of the universe. Race exocraft, build colonies, explore, trade, fight, and survive together. Land on beautiful planets teeming with life. Survive hazardous environments where alien civilizations seek their fortune and outlaws take it by force. Go on intergalactic missions. The entire game is playable in virtual reality for a more immersive experience. So again, that's from No Man's Sky website. I think No Man's Sky was launched in 2016. And I found doing a little research, I love this statement: the planets of No Man's Sky are made of math, and the algorithms which created this whole video game experience, in which no two people are going to ever experience the same thing. And in fact, one player is never, ever going to explore the same world again. I mean, the algorithms of that are phenomenal. I think my father might have been very, very interested in how they did that. That was his delight. Fascinating. So we really have the most evidence of his interest in space. So let me go back to another, I'm going to finish my screen share here. I hope you guys are doing okay. Is this interesting? Is this boring? Let's see. And I went and dug around for some more. The octahedron in this is fascinating to me. It's definitely a technology all by itself. I've had a lot in meditation. I've had a lot of activation around the octahedron for many years, and I feel it around me like all the time as an etheric living source field. So this is all screenshots from No Man's Sky, which I find really kind of beautiful. Yeah. And this image, this takes me back right to Mars. It's like kind of mind-blowing right there. Yeah. So I didn't actually notice that he'd gotten this, although I didn't look into their huge widescreen television. And I realized I should have done that to see if he had ever gotten his hands on this. You know, at that point in his life, he was a shut-in who was not leaving the house because alcohol had consumed him. He was no longer functional. And he lived with his sister. They fought like an old married couple. They were married. They lived together 15 years, and they fought like they were a couple. And she died 3 days after he did, and it was a total mess. Anyway, I don't think he may not have followed. His follow through at that point in his life was very poor, so it might have just been a passing interest of his. And there we have again this no man's sky in the octahedron, which is, it's like a creation source. That's what I feel kind of intuitively. It's kind of beautiful. Look at this. I could escape here for a while. And what's interesting about No Man's Sky is that it's not a shoot 'em up, kill what you see kind of game. It's very much about space exploration, which, I mean, I could get down with that. There's a lot of, I would say, quite a bit of benevolence going on here. It's a kind of non-standard approach to gaming, as far as I can tell. We might be ending this bit of the share. Oh, okay, we can end right here with this part. That's my father and I around 1973. And I very much prefer to recall the pleasantries and any kind of warmth. I mean, like I said before, my father was always a safe parent. My mother was definitely not that person. She frightened me. And I feel in this picture, he must have just got back from work. And I know he would always look for me. Yeah. I mean, we had a really strong bond. Our temperaments were really similar. Our interests were really similar, and that lasted a lifetime. Yeah. So let me stop the share. I want to talk a little bit about what I found on my father's laptop. He had a bunch of computers, but the one he used the most. What did I find? Oh, more space stuff. Stellarium, which is a planetarium for the computer. There's different software programs. Space Engine, which is a virtual universe you can explore on your computer. He didn't clear his browsing history, so I could learn a little bit more from that aspect of things. I found that he'd visited many times the exoplanet archive related to this Kepler spacecraft, which NASA launched in 2009. Was out there in space a long time, many years. It maybe became out of fun, just decommissioned around, I don't know, I want to say maybe 2018, 16, something like that. Exoplanet archive. Kepler found, according to NASA, we don't know how true this is, 2,600 exoplanets capable of sustaining life. At least 2,600. So it's very interesting. So my father was kind of poking around there. What was he looking for? Going home. I think he wanted to go home. And he would listen when I was a kid, still living back in New Hampshire. He had his man cave in his shop and his tinkering setups all over the basement. And he would go down there and sit in his recliner with the lights off, and he would listen to space music, which I love also. It's like, you just feel like you're astral traveling. It takes you deep into another realm. Very much. His computer. Yeah. Let's talk about hacking first. I talked about hacking books I found that belonged to him. They were heavily annotated. And I'm still working on forgiving myself that I threw them away, because I could have learned more about what he was trying to hack. I know from his browsing history that he had pulled up websites related to hacking Wi-Fi networks. Yeah, so what? I mean, that's not that interesting. And I frankly I think he was more like, I can feel this, like he was interested in, could he do it? Look at his career in signals intelligence. Would that be interesting to him? Of course it would. Was he doing something illicit? We don't know. We don't know. No, he was interested in intercepting signals. So let's go back to the fractal antenna. I mentioned SDR, what is SDR software? Software-defined radio allows you to have a transceiving setup or a receiving is the more common setup, a radio setup out of your computer based on software, not hardware. And it feels like this has gained popularity over time. So I found, for example, a program called AirSpy. So with this, you can intercept all kinds of radio signals, whether it's tracking an airplane or just radio, regular radio, or radio signals from space, radio astronomy. I mean, really endless opportunities to intercept signals. And it can also be made into a transceiver, which I think is even more interesting because not only are you receiving signals, you are sending signals. So I'm still digging around the computer to learn what I can about all of this. And Dad was expert at taking what he knew and using it in unconventional applications. So taking things and kind of tweaking them, kind of MacGyvering things. So, oh yeah, he could do that for sure. So what was he actually trying to intercept? I mean, of course, my mind is like, I guess I just wonder. Was it really the neighbor's Wi-Fi or was it something up there? Maybe I will learn more in time. I also found, oh, Veracrypt. This has given me a little bit of a headache. So software, open source software, Veracrypt is a program that will allow you to encrypt a disk or a partition into the hard drive of your computer, which renders it inaccessible. It's encrypted. Or you could do that with the entire storage device. The whole hard drive of the computer could be encrypted. So a work in progress. That's very interesting to me. Yeah, a work in progress of investigating. It's been quite a riddle putting all this together. It's been really time consuming, kind of fascinating. And I did have to put kind of the emotional baggage. I had to make a journey with all that over a couple of years so I could really dig deeper into this. Otherwise, I just would have been it would have been too much. I was not ready. You know, the hacking books, I was so, when he and his sister died, she kept him alive. I'm so grateful. He would have been living in a cardboard box somewhere. And he had long hair, long beard, wouldn't ever wear shoes, barely fed himself, smoked, chain smoking, living in a darkened room. I mean, really, she kept him alive. I'm grateful for that. But when they died, they didn't leave a will. Nobody left a will. And it all landed in my lap. And I was so aggravated with the possessions and the the mess of it all. Like two bright people who could have figured out what to do about all that. They didn't give a shit. They're both sick. They knew they were, they were at the end of their term, let's say. But that was one of the reasons I chucked some stuff that I wish I hadn't now. Like I said, I could have some compassion for the state I was in and the overwhelm of walking my father through cancer, hospice, dying, and then that whole thing that happened after he died. It was quite burdensome, to be frank. So there's a bunch of stuff on my father. There's always going to be more. This story is never going to end because I will always be getting more information. There's more to come at the end of the video, which is going to leave your jaw on the floor. Far out. And my father, this is curious. He always, he was very adept at disguising his identity online. He had online aliases and always used a spread spectrum phone, which is untrackable military technology, and was very familiar with the Tor browser, the Onion router, also military technology that was made available to the public, I think 20 years ago. It's famous for being a gateway into the dark web. However, mostly what my dad knew about it was the technology behind it, military technology. But was he disguising something about his own activity, or was he just, I mean, he worked in intelligence, he worked in top secret classified world. He knew how porous all our digital communications are entirely porous. Nothing is private. He knew how to crack things, right? That was his job. cryptography, steganography, et cetera, et cetera. Boom, disguise your identity. He always covered the camera on his laptop with tape, and he taught me I always do the same thing. I mean, he's like, people can take your identity, you know that, right? I kind of thought he was kidding. I know he's not. So let's thank you all for listening to that. I hope that was interesting in some way for you, or at least we're building out the picture of who he was and how does that inform what happened to me. We may end up here with more questions than we had answers, but I think he wanted to go back to the stars. Yeah. Let's go into my brother. Let's do a little screen share on that. So I've gotten really interested in the generational aspect of abduction. I know my father was taken somewhere in 1952 when he was 9 years old. He was abducted. And I had gone and asked my brother through texting to tell me more about his out-of-body experiences and any psychic experience he could remember having. So I have it on record. Wow, look what happened. This is back in, I want to say November. Going back into screen share mode. So let's see. Given what I had asked him, blah, blah, blah. He talks first in this series of text messages about the gifted program. Getting out of classes in grade school to learn things like speed reading and ESP, and his scores being higher as a sender rather than a receiver. And he talks about packs of cards being used for that, and to send the suit to the person you were working with. That's pretty interesting. And by the way, for the record, I never asked him in this exchange about gifted program. He offered that on his own. I think that's kind of interesting. And this was the jaw dropper for me. Oh my God. When I said, I had asked him if he recalled seeing, I just came right out with it, man. I said, do you remember any extraterrestrial encounters in your childhood? And he said, no aliens that I recall, though the very real feeling, dreaming, question mark, of floating up out of my bed, lights on but dim in my childhood was recurrent and incredibly vivid. Floating up out of his bed in childhood being recurrent. I would descend to about 5 feet above the floor, listening to mom and dad watching TV in the living room or perhaps in late night silence, and move as though pulled by an unseen hand out of my room, down the hallway and up, never out through the door. What the fuck? We were having parallel experiences and I never knew it. I was always terrified, trying to shout, but unable to find breath, sound familiar. The dreams were not long, and I often would remember little else until I would shout long and loud enough in the dream to actually wake up, ramping a gurgle or loud sigh into a scream very suddenly. Strange and repetitive, but no aliens. I'm like, dude, there's aliens all over that. Let me tell you. Because when I was being taken, I had the same experience. Often I would remember being taken out the side of the house rather than straight up, but that's the only difference. I had no idea, and I was shocked when I read this. I was shocked. I had no idea. We never talked about this, and I don't remember him shouting in his sleep, just like he doesn't remember me doing the same thing. So we were having parallel experiences. And I've tried to get an age range on him, age range when this was happening for him, and he's kind of ducked out of the conversation since then. Whoa, this was like big news for me. Yeah, and then he goes on to talk about the gifted program. He said it occasionally seemed like a remnant of Cold War attempts to find sensitives in the population, the way they competed with similar Soviet programs that seemed to procure telekinetics, clairvoyance, and similar adepts. Who knows? I never asked him about the gifted program. He offered that freely. So, wow. Wait, there's more. Yeah, he had shared a memory about having a class project. It was kind of long-winded, so I didn't want to share the text on that. I can encapsulate it pretty quickly. He had an assignment for school. I don't know what class it was. And he walks into the classroom. He has a random number. He writes it on a piece of paper, sticks it in some girl's book, and then asks everybody in the class to write down a number on a piece of paper, send them all to the front of the room, tabulate the total. It's exactly the total of what he wrote down on the paper that he shoved in that girl's book. That's pretty far out. And he said, to this day, I don't know how that happened. And I say to him, here, you can read this. I know your psi ability can be brought back. It's not gone. The story in the classroom is remarkable. That was a kind of psychic precognition, or in a way, maybe time travel. I think you'd be a great remote viewer. And he says, don't tell the government. And to that, I reply, too late. They already got you. And there our conversation ended. He never replied to that. The seed has been planted, however. Whoa. Whoa. So the generational nature of contact and induction, as well as intuitive and psychic ability, we have that here. We see my brother, myself. My ability is well documented. Go to my website. At any of the session pages at the bottom, you can see copious, voluminous testimony to what's going on in client sessions, which are all entirely intuitive. So we have my father, my brother, and myself, all with some level of that ability, or touching that world in some way, documented. And we have contact. We have contact. And what's curious to me, we know that contact can heighten people's psychic ability, turn on new ability, amplify what's already there, etc. So which comes first? It's a kind of a koan or a riddle for me. Like, what are people abducted because they already have some sense of that? I don't necessarily think so. Interesting riddle. Which comes first, the abduction or the tendency to be fairly psychic or intuitive, let's say, clairsentient, and so on. It's been really helpful to put all this together, kind of looking as much as I can with my brother. Hopefully more will unfold over the years. I would love to get him on the channel. What do you think about that? It's going to take a long time. He's still at the point where he thinks aliens aren't a thing. However, I said, hey, why don't you go back and look in the crypt of your garage for some drawings I know you did when you were a kid. He spent his whole childhood drawing spaceships and aliens. It's like he doesn't remember that. What? And listening to Doctor Who and The Hobbit and Star Trek, Star Wars. Reading sci-fi. I mean, that was his thing. He grew up and he left it behind, but there's a lot to be mined there. And hopefully I can get him on track with that. Of course, you don't want to push a person. If they're not ready and leave it. I have to respect that, respect his journey. It will come when it does, or it won't. Another thing I think is interesting is I did just running just look at the numerology on my brother's birthday, the life path numbers for my brother and I. I'm an 11 and he's a 33. These are master numbers, which are purported to have a little more octane, or okay, we could say a lot more octane for those master numbers, 33 and 11. I got curious, like, is there a thing with people being abducted into the programs? Would we find more master numbers in the population? Interesting, right? So again, hoping more unfolds with my brother. I'm holding the door open for that, but I noticed how he left the conversation, doesn't want to go back to it. Give me time. All right. We're leaving my family behind. Some of you might be tired of me talking about that too. So let's go into another screen share. I hope these screen shares are working. It's going to suck if they don't. Let me go into this. So we're going to go into the mantids and some new information on the mantids. Leaving the texting behind. So, let me not forget to share this. This is my brother and I back in the 70s. Sorry, it's a little grainy. My poor brother in that poor suit and his shirt buttoned up to the neck like that, in the shoes. I don't, I imagine we were going to church. I feel really bad because look how stiff he is. At least I have my dolly, and you can tell my mother dressed us. Look at this. Picture perfect and very much not perfect. There was so much going on in the family that was highly deviant. I'm just glad I have my doll. That's all. Oh, and I like the Oldsmobile Cutlass in the background. Is that cool? I wish we could see the whole car. Yeah. So anyway, that's my brother and I. Back to the Mantids. So in back in November, I think this was, I started to do some drawing. Some of you may know that I spent about 25 years as a professional artist. I haven't been doing much. It calls me back, and I'm very much inspired to do a whole body of work on my experiences in the programs and beings that were part of the programs. So this was based on one of the Mantid elders from Mars. And it came through really intuitively, this drawing, over some drawing sessions. Took me a little while. I'm rusty. You know, it's a big drawing. It's probably 3 feet tall. It's a bit life size. And I'd like to turn my drawings that I'm working on into paintings, but that's going to make me, I have to go on sabbatical to do that. I really need, when you're painting, I really need to be doing nothing else. I have to live and breathe it to do my best work. I don't have that time right now. I'm very busy with client sessions, which I love. So let's get into what happened when I was, this drawing opened the realm of the Mantids to me, and I got a lot more information and memory to come back. I never anticipated that the drawing would open the gate, and it did. So it will be interesting to see what else comes up as I'm drawing other figures out of my SSP years. I ended up connecting to the unified field of consciousness of the Mantids, which was fascinating. I had some battle memories surface, which we'll talk about here in a moment. I hadn't, in the very beginning, understood. I didn't understand how we on Mars had Mantids who were working for us as techs and surgeons and mechanics, and yet we were always fighting with the Mantids. It didn't make any sense. So I didn't, the exopolitical situation with the Mantids on Mars is really complicated. And there's different groups, different dimensional expressions, different iterations of Mantid. They're not all the same. I want to make that clear too. I think a lot of the Mantids who have been featured in human abductions, some of them are very compromised. They have been enslaved through mind control and other means. That's not to say that there aren't nefarious groups of Mantids running around. It's just like humans, we have different groups, different factions, different alliances and alignments. So let me share a little bit of what, I'm going to read a little bit of part of the channel that I received over the days and nights. I work mostly at night on art things. I'm definitely a night owl. Does not, now that I'm 50, it really doesn't serve me very well. My body doesn't like that. Let me say just a little piece on the Mantid origins. Yeah, again, I thought this was interesting. We've come from many places, and deceptions about our origins are many. And here I have a sense of manifestation of pure energy, consciousness given form via the will and whim of the logos. We were given to ourselves fully formed. We function for the improvement of all, the betterment of creation. Then I see Mantids in a kind of pod, a stasis pod for a kind of safekeeping. Survival becomes us. It is our nature to take our place in creation, to also evolve. We exist as many and as needed. This will not truncate our survival or expression of creation. We are survivors. And I get the sense that the Mantids as a general group, have survived cataclysm after cataclysm and destruction, both natural and unnatural. We were weakened once, they say, but now we continue. We must be of benefit, so we will serve you. I'm looking for any physical place of origin, and I'm shown a bright orange planet in an explosion, and I hear planetary bodies which collided. They continue. This helped disseminate us through the greater neighborhood of space. It was always known we'd end up closer to Earth. This was the design of creation, bringing all things closer to rebirth. And here I have a sense of endings and beginnings. And then they continue, the end of one thing begets another. This is how we've ended up as many, worlds rent asunder. I can also feel that as a general group, they, as a diaspora, they too want for change. I'm shown the stasis pods and life in waiting. Interesting. And recall that in all the channeling that I do, there's always information that's coming through beyond the spoken word. So there's an energetic transmission that's way beyond the linear that goes on through all of this. And about the unity field, the unified consciousness field of this group and many, many others at upper dimensions, they exist as singular beings, but yet they share a unified mind in the best of ways. I'm not talking about a hive mind, but there's this beautiful telepathic communion among them that keeps the whole group in balance and a kind of synthesis and a synergy that is really remarkable. And there's something really elegant about that. And so it was like I was relating with the whole mind stream. Just a note on that. So what happened with the mantids in my memory recall here? It was shocking and it made a lot of sense. We were basically putting them in a situation in which they would then be mind controlled. That's how we got some of them to work for us. And there's many different iterations of aggression that happened on Mars with the mantids over time. This is just one example of many. This is one recall. We bombed them from the air, introducing a kind of gas into the labyrinth. And through that, we bombarded them with frequency. So it's like we're injecting this moment of terror and trauma into their unified field and into their home. And in that sort of rogue moment, we will introduce these horrible frequencies that will make them co-optable. That's like the pith of it, the short answer. It's shocking in a way, but it totally makes sense because they are masters of frequency. That's what they are. They're harmonizers of frequency and vibration and energy. Absolutely. That's why they're masterful at what they do. And they spoke to me on this. And they said of this bombing and gassing and so on that we did, we had to go down deeper and deeper, not up. And they're talking about the labyrinth while they're being bombed and gassed and so on. We could not escape. The sounds were, and I wrote parenthetically, horrible. Like I didn't have an English word bad enough to describe what was going on. And I was experiencing this as if from their perspective, it was excruciating. It was intense. It was so bad. The sounds and etherically coming through me were, I don't even have words. It was awful. It was as if the end of our world were coming again. We went down as far as we could, but no faster we could go. The feeling of this transmission is so big, I write. So much more is conveyed through energy rather than the word expression here, which is halting and unusually inept. I can feel a great trauma here, a tremendous wounding and a great sadness. Some died and some perished as if from fright. I hear frequency rendered them dead. And again, I hear a horrible screeching cacophony of frequency and vibration that worked more in a much more sophisticated way than gassing them, which is kind of crude. And they replied, all this is accomplished through the harmonics of energy and sound. Remember our strengths, and you will also know our weakness. Absolutely. And this makes so much sense to me. Then I hear the mantids were the perfect project. We could experiment with new techniques, advances, and they would never, ever wear out. And I'm recalling in the phrase above, we are survivors. That is so true. Truer statement never made there. That's spot on. So this is intense. And particularly in that I was going back into the, like experiencing it firsthand through them, rather than as the perpetrator, more from the seat of the victim, which was very educational and difficult and unexpected. So, wow. So the next part of this, I think I've recalled in other videos or somewhere in the series, I've talked about being raided at night at the Mars base in one of the most intense firefights I can recall in my whole experience there. We were ambushed at night at the base, and the base was fucking decimated. I had my leg blown off, the left leg was blown off, and the lights in the sky, there's all this citron yellow light in the sky. I will always remember this. And in fact, I've had horrible PTSD around fireworks, like extreme, like it sends me into a really bad place. That has since cleared up because I've healed so much. But that night at the Mars base was instigated by the Mantids. They were attacking us in our own craft, and they had help from another group. However, they were also mind controlled. In my memory, I can feel them. They're like automatons. They're like drones. They're dropping, they're bombing us. It's like an eye for an eye, man. We bombed them, they bomb us back, and like, wow. And they mutinied. I mean, it was a kind of mutiny. They were working for us, and they had we could say another rogue moment in their programming in which this was enabled to occur. And it was intense. It was very intense. So, wow. But let me read some really uplifted piece on what I would call like a restoration. This is really beautiful. As I was remembering all of this and receiving more information about what had occurred through them, I say to the Mantid Collective, I'm sorry this is what we're talking about now, but I know we need to, these skirmishes and what role I played in all of this. And I hear them say, insufferable losses, many families died, nowhere to escape to. Our frequencies could not entirely protect us. And they mean, by that is meant their high level personal and collective energy fields. They have a collective protection. They had an amazing frequency fence around the labyrinth and their own personal protection. It's all frequency and energy. And they continue, to this we must bear witness. Victims and perpetrators were many. And I see that the Mantids had many options about how they've applied themselves to their own experience and had some choice in the matter in a cosmic big picture kind of way, sampling what I would call as creation's bouquet, just as we humans do on Earth, experiencing both gain and loss, beauty and tragedy, and various survival problems and triumphs as a way of learning. So that I could see through all of this that they had something that was transpiring for them. Not to make light of anyone suffering on either side here, but there's always something bigger playing out, I have found, at least in my own journey. For the Mantis, it was about doing better next time. I hear this through the channel that I'm receiving as I'm drawing. I also hear they could never wipe us out. This is from the perspective of the Mantis. We are, above all, survivors, adept at recovery and adjusting to new conditions, circumstances, and game plans. I ask, what about the elders? The elders that's my name for them. They seem to be have a little more seniority and kind of they were responsible for keeping the coherency of the group together, and that is again through energy, frequency, and vibration. They replied, some died and some lived. They protected those who were left. Our signal is strong but interrupted. Harm can come, damage can be done. We are not invincible. I'm so sorry, I say telepathically. They reply, there is injury to you, don't you see? And affirmative, psychological above all. I want to know about these Mantids now. Do they survive on Mars? What is the new score? So this is all communication that's going on as I'm drawing. Our land and place has shrunk and been infringed upon. We travel and it is different now. I have a sense of time repeating itself. All this staying in one place in time, replaying over and over. Such is the nature of events, so it can be revisited. Time is malleable and in a sense without purpose. What is now? What was then? What was gained and what was lost? There can be a change of events. And in a way, we're talking about shifting, if not what happened, but the outcome. And that's what we're doing ultimately here in this conversation. I continue here. Maybe that's why we speak of this now, to bring fresh air and new life to an old and repetitive scene. I am sorry if I caused harm and was part of harm done. There can be no recompense. Battles lost, battles won. The end is the beginning. The challenge is to allow new life to occur. Cling to nothing done or undone. This is the superior understanding. And so it is done. Our commitment one to one is clear now. And they're saying our commitment to each other, to myself and these mantids, it's clear because we have kind of come into a new harmonic about all of this. I feel the truth of our essences, theirs and mine, shining forth into a new age, something restored. So at the end of all of that, I really felt like I couldn't tell who was who and what was what, and that there's a great healing, unified sensibility inside of all that. You know, I think that's ultimately what we're being asked to do here in polarity, in this dualized timeline where there's so much separation and so much us and them. If we find where we have communion and we go to that place, and so much healing happens. Wow. So all in all, although this was challenging for me on a variety of levels, it was really beautiful. So thanks for listening to that. I mean, as I share all of this, I know something is liberated. 100%. And I could say too that the Mantid elders, here's another thing, a riff on consciousness, which is so important for us to develop our own consciousness and to become the masters of our own consciousness fields. The Mantid elders could leave their bodies. And to me, you know, if they were being attacked, they could also leave. They would just exit with their consciousness, bodies left behind. It's just a reminder that we are above all ourselves, even as humans. We are fields of consciousness, and it's so it's such a teaching that's coming up for me over and over in so many different ways, with different groups, different channels, through client sessions, and so on. The power of our own consciousness is supreme, infinite, and transcendent. It's so centrifuge in all of this, expanding human consciousness. And I'm a big advocate of how if you say, well, how do I do that? How do I broaden my consciousness and connect to the source field, the cosmos, the heart, what's in me? How do I understand myself from the perspective of infinite consciousness? And I'm going to say, hands down, every time somebody asks me this, meditation. It's not easy to come into the stillness of meditation when we are so used to being like hopped up with lots of technology stuff at our fingertips and sort of short attention span and like monkey mind going all the time. But it's going to be worth your effort, and that's how you're going to get free. Remember, on this healing journey, if you go back to my original videos, May 2020, holy shit, I was a wreck in that video. I've changed so much, but meditation is, which I began, I don't know, 9-10 years ago now, is what has brought me to the table and allowed me to become all that I have in the process of all of this. Meditation is the centrifuge of all in my own life every day, without fail. I eat, sleep, drink water, and meditate. So a big plug on meditation there and reclaiming our consciousness. So just 2 more things here. Let's go back to the Pigman briefly. After I recorded the number 12, the 12th video in the Bringing Light to the Darkness series back in March. This was March 18th, 2022, many months ago now. I never shared this, and it was really a beautiful moment. I talked about the Pigman out on Planet X. He was an ally, even though he worked for the Draco as well. We could say he was owned by them. He was hierarchically, he would have been above me. He was a trainer, but he always had my back, and he was a friend. I feel like he helped protect me from their wrath in some way. He came in that night before bed. I heard him, I felt him, and he said, thank you for letting them know about us. We have suffered. Those with voice help break the spell. Thank you for letting them know about us. We have suffered. Those with voice help break the spell. So those of us who can bring language to this, I mean, he's a voiceless slave out there, was. So much of that in our solar system, in our galaxy, the enslavement of many beings. It's heartbreaking. And he's saying that when you bring voice and you allow other people to know it happens, it breaks some kind of spell. And that's what I'm talking about through, we could talk about my father being a kind of slave, myself, certainly in the programs, Pigman, the mantids we were trying to enslave. I mean, the enslavement of other races has gone on and on and on. And the paradigm of power over, it's all gone on long enough. I think we could probably agree on that. Okay. One last thing, and this is hard for me to say. It's going to take us into the next video. I'm not going to be able to unpack this tonight, but I will tell you the information that I have. New Year's Eve, this was 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago. In fact, when I made the first recording of this that I lost, it was only 1 week back. I cried. I don't know if I'm going to do that again. Wow. I was seated at my altar space. It was coming close to midnight on New Year's Eve. I was making some supplications and kind of contemplating the year that had passed and kind of asking for help, having some intentions about where I am in my life now and so on. My father suddenly appears as a tall gray. And I know it's him right away. I just see the gray and my father like in the same unit, and they're the same thing. No shock there. I've talked about that before, seeing him after he died, coming back as a tall gray, and I was definitely not ready to entertain him at that point. I told him to get out of here, leave me alone. I'm not ready. And on his deathbed, when he was in hospice, and just in the days before he died, when I was with him, I saw him going back between a tall gray, a short gray, and his human self. I didn't expect to see that. So he appears 2 weeks ago and he says, I'm going back to my original spawn now. This is my origin point, and to it I return. And he's talking about Zeta Reticuli. I'm going back to my original spawn. This is my origin point, and to it I return. I am 6. My heart is pounding. I am 6. You will not be surprised, will you? I am 6. If you've watched other videos, you know who 6 is. And I'm still digesting this. It's really, it makes so much sense, and I never would have thought it. And when that information came in, I did what no good channel should ever do. I wanted to censor it. I wanted to make the information go away. Whew. Yeah. I'm just having a pause here. Be with me for a moment. I am 6. To be continued. It's a bit of a cliffhanger, isn't it? It's shocking. It's shocking, and it makes so much sense. And I never, ever, ever in 1,000 million years would have thought of this. To be continued. So dedicating I want to say the merit of our journey and the goodness of our conversation here today, encompassing all of you viewers and me and my heart. I want to dedicate that to my father on his journey back to Zeta Reticuli in a place of homing for him and a place of goodness. That's the original seed. That's the original seed of goodness before they came out to this area of more with the Orion group and all of that. It's like they were co-opted too. He was made into a slave for the Orion group. Dedicating also the merit of our time together here and the goodness and love here, the healing here, the harmony here to unity among many races, humans first and foremost, among us humans, to many different races and beings and groups across space and time in many dimensions. See you next time, Rebecca Rose, Sirius Blue.